Hi. Today we're going to go over servicing your Ritchey wheels. In this video, we'll go over pulling the freehub assembly, replacing the freehub, as well as the seal, pawls, and springs, including the bearings themselves. The whole process should take you about half an hour, and in this video we'll go over all of those steps.
Oh yeah!
All right, here's everything you need to service your wheels. Freehub body, pawl and spring kit, bearing kit. We'll be sure to note which bearings and pawl kits and freehub bodies you'll need in the comments section below. Nice lightweight grease, something like rock and roll slickoleum. You can even use a little bit heavier weight oil. For the pawls and springs, a dental pick and tweezers are very helpful. To get the bearings out, we'll actually use a rubber mallet and then a punch. Sometimes a dummy axle is helpful if you happen to have it. To press the bearings back in, a bearing drift set like this one from Wheels Manufacturing, and I actually made this with a metric nut and bolt for pressing it in. If you don't have access to a drift set, you can actually use an old sealed bearing to press it in. The important thing is not to press in your new bearing by the inner race. You want to have full contact with the bearing, so if you have a washer and this may be the same size, that will work as well. We'll go over that a little bit later. Of course, having rags on hand is extra helpful. So let's start with disassembling our wheel. As you know, our two-piece hubs are pretty simple to work on. All you have to do is just pull off this freehub body, and then that'll give you access to the bearings and pawls. So let's go ahead and remove that. Let's sit our wheel down for a second. Let's go ahead and pull apart our freehub and axle assembly. Give this guy a good wipe down. Let's double check our polymer bushing here. Make sure that there's no cracks, deterioration. If there are, you'll need to get that replaced. Of course, inspect every part of your axle. Looks good. All right. All right. So let's get to our pawls. It's good practice to have a clean rag beneath your hub here. I'll show you why in just a second. So let's take our dental tool, slide it in right there where the pawl is, and just pop it up. All right. Let's go ahead and clean this guy while we're here. Again, you want to check it for any damage. Looks pretty good. All right. Set that guy down. All right, so let's go ahead and clean this. Now we're going to want to inspect our pawls here. You're looking for chunks missing out of the teeth. Sometimes that can happen if there's just too much torque on the system or some sort of contaminant gets in there. But these all look pretty good. If they look like this, you could probably just clean this out and then lube it. But for the sake of the video, we're going to go ahead and pull everything. So let's grab our friend the tweezer. This is where having the rag is pretty handy. Nice thing about having the rag is you can drop the pawls and springs on your workbench, and it's a soft surface. They won't just go bouncing away and gotta go searching for it later. So, okay, let's go and pull our springs. Same thing. Now again, if you're going to be reusing your springs, just set them aside. You can clean them out, get all the old grease off of there, go ahead and reuse them. Okay, there you go. Should look like that, easy peasy. Now let's take our rag. It's going to wipe off as much of this inside as we can. You'll see there's still grease deposits inside here. Use our friend the dental tool. I really want to just kind of get in there and clean it out. Okay. All right, so once when you cleaned everything out, let's go ahead and remove the bearings. Now this will be true for all of our two-piece wheel systems as well as V45 wheels. I like to start with removing the non-drive side of the bearing first, and I'll show you why. Getting in there, if you don't have a specific tool for getting in and pulling this out, like this guy, this actually gets in there. And then what you would do is you come in from the other side and use a punch to push it out. If you don't have that, another viable option is to actually use your axle. Now the axle has a shelf on it, so it should bottom out. Okay, so take our hammer, give it a couple taps, and it should pop right out. If it comes out too easily, that might be an issue, but there should be a little bit of force behind it. So there's your bearing. Set this guy down. Okay, so let's set our axle aside. Now what we can do is we can come in from the other side and pull this out. This is where you have a bearing press, or in this case, what I'm going to do is use this little system that I put together here for pulling out our bearing. So this washer will fit the inside diameter of here and press against the body of the bearing. Take these guys, which will sit on the face of the hub body. Having a little sleeve. This sleeve also doubles as our punch. Let's go ahead and center everything, because you don't want it to be off center when you start pulling on this. Okay, so you may have noticed our T-handle before. This other side has an Allen in it. Grab our wrench. Just apply pressure. Pull out our bearing. There you go. Set that down. Okay, so at this point you want to inspect the bearing shell. There shouldn't be anything going on too crazy in here. Just want to make sure that it's clean. Let's take our rag, wipe everything down. All right, so now we're ready to install our new bearings, new pawls, new freehub body. So let's get to that. Now the nice thing about having a bearing drift is you can see that step down, this is the exact inner diameter of our bearing. This is the exact outer diameter of our bearing. This guy just sits on there like that, and it ensures that it presses against the full outer race and inner race at the same time, so you get nice consistent pressure. Again, when you're installing bearings, you don't want to push on just the inner race. You want to be pressing against the whole thing. If you don't have a spare bearing that you can use to, press against the whole thing, then really take your time. Look for a bearing drift. They're pretty easy to find on the internet. So let's go ahead and load everything up here. Let's get our wheel. Just kind of set it up for now. Okay. Now that everything's in there, go ahead and start applying pressure. You'll feel when the bearing has seated properly and it bottoms out in its cup. Once when it stops, you don't have to press harder to really snug it up. Okay, there it is. Okay, let's go ahead and pull this out here. Nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. You want to make sure that it's fully seated in there. You can see it. There'll be like a very tiny little lip that'll come up above the bearing. Same thing with this guy. Okay, so now that we've done this, let's go ahead and install our pawls and springs. Now when you install your springs, you'll notice that there's kind of a dog bone shape in here. You want to install the spring in the smaller of the bones, and the longer, straighter part, I don't know how well you can see that on there, the longer, straighter part of the spring is towards the center of the hub. So you can either use your fingers or tweezers. I like to use tweezers here. Just pinch the spring together, slide it in. And we're going to do that all the way around. Okay, so let's grab our friend the dental tool. Here's our new pawl. Again, in the dog bone shape, it'll go on the opposite end, obviously. This part's a little bit more tricky. You're going to want to actually pull back this part of the spring that engages the pawl. You can either insert this with tweezers or your hand, it doesn't really matter. It should just drop right in. Okay, so now that all of our pawls are installed, we have nice action, great. So now we want to apply a little bit of grease in here. Again, something really lightweight. We don't want to gunk it up. Really what you're doing is you're just kind of applying it on the teeth of it. And then I like to use a little bit of oil in these articulating parts. Okay. Let's put our seal on. If you get a replacement freehub body, it'll come with a new seal. Use that. Okay, so axle assembly installation. So starting with our end cap, we have our metal dust shield. If your wheels are older and they come with a rubber dust skirt, go ahead and try to swap it out for this metal one if you can. Freehub body, polymer bushing. It's important to note that the freehub body for the two-piece mountain wheels is different than the freehub body for our Apex and Zeta wheels. So make sure that you're using the right freehub body, otherwise you will have binding in your system. Once when that's on, go ahead and reinstall it. Not bad. There's your non-drive end cap. There shouldn't be any play in the system. If there is, most likely your bearing wasn't installed completely, and so it's not seated on there. Or there's something else that's horribly wrong. But sounds pretty good. Make sure the oil gets in there, everything's nice and smooth, and you're done. And there you go. You've just serviced your wheel set. Regular maintenance and upkeep on your wheels will ensure that they'll last for many years to come. If you have any questions, shoot us some notes below or email ritcheydesign@ritcheylogic.com. Until next time.